How does a landlord fix an unlawful rental increase so the judge won't rip him a new one in open court about an unlawful rental increase? Hi, my name is Rob Wells. I'm the Landlord Warrior on TikTok and YouTube. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to our videos. Now, this comment is coming from a video we did about a landlord that raised their rent. I think it was like 54.5%. It seemed like the rental increase was above the legal limits, at least under the Tenants Protection Act, because it related to like a landlord increasing the rent for like an apartment unit or a multi-dwelling unit. It wasn't a single family home. Okay. Side note, and we'll do a separate video, single family homes are generally excluded from the Tenants Protection Act on certain conditions, such as you're an individual person that owns your property, the corporation doesn't own it, or a real estate investment trust doesn't own the property, okay, with a particular disclosure given to tenants in writing. So that being said, the question is, well, how do you fix this? Okay, so you don't get sued, so you don't lose your non-payment of rent case because you're unlawfully demanding rent that exceeds the limits of the Tenants Protection Act. Well, generally speaking, what has to be done and what we've done in the past is any case that we review, basically, we're reviewing for this legal issue. Okay, you're looking at all the rental increases put together. Okay, and when we spot issue where the rent may have been increased above the limits of the Tenants Protection Act, we're going to try to figure out what the lawful rental increase was. Okay. And then what we're going to do, depending on what jurisdiction you're in, if you're under Tenants Protection Act, we'll find out what the lawful rental increases were for the years that the rent was increased. Okay. And then find out what the difference is and what the rent could have been raised to legally is, and what the unlawful rental increase is to get the difference. Okay. Because under the Tenants Protection Act, there are penalties for landlords that keep, if the tenant is paid the unlawful rental increase, there are penalties for landlords keeping the overages that they received. Okay, a landlord's only liable for the rent that they unlawfully could receive under the Tenants Protection Act. Now that's under Civil Code Section 1947.12K. Okay, they could be liable for K1B exactly states out damages in the amount by which the payment demanded, accepted, received, or retained exceeds the maximum allowable rent. That establishes the floor of what the landlord's liable for. So the simple solution usually is two things: is give the tenant notice, hey, listen, hey, that rental increase that we gave you, we're rescinding that. Okay. If it was recently caught, the issue, and the rent has just started to be charged, basically, it's usually just repealing that rental increase, right, or canceling it, and then giving a new change in terms of tenancy with the correct rental increase. Now we're raising it 7.7% or whatever the maximum rate is, or whatnot. Okay, that's step one. And then step two is we figure out what the overage and unlawful rent is, and then refund the tenant back the money, basically. If you do those two items, generally speaking, you can cut off legal liability to the tenant for any damages, that type of thing, particularly if you do this on your own. Okay. Now, under the Tenants Protection Act, there is an attorney fee provision, like in the court's discretion. The court could award reasonable attorney's fees and costs for any violation of the Tenants Protection Act. Basically, whether that be in an eviction action or in a lawsuit to recover damages. I think if you reform your rents and refund the tenants back the money, it kind of does show good faith that you're trying to do the right thing, basically. So you could defend against an attorney's fee award by acting timely and on your own, basically. But that's just my 50 cents about it. Take it for what it's worth. Okay. So I think if you do those two things, you can avoid the nasty penalties of punitive damages, because the TPA has a provision about that, about awarding punitives and, injunctive relief and damages to a landlord. But if you fix it on your own, that's probably the best solution. So landlords, if you have a situation where you might have unlawfully increased the rent and now you need your help trying to fix that, or you're dealing with a landlord tenant issue and if you're in the Northern California area, we might be able to help you out here. Put your comments, questions down below. Until next time, folks, we'll talk to you then. Thanks.